All right, let's dive into something really interesting today. Um, Billie Eilish's Hit Me Hard and Soft tour.
Ooh,
Yeah, so we're looking specifically at a review of her Brisbane show from The Guardian.
okay,
And it's the first stop on her Australian tour.
okay.
So it's kind of a fresh take on what this tour is all about. And I think what's really interesting about this deep dive is we're going beyond just the concert review. We're really looking at
Right.
what this tour is saying about her as an artist, about her growth, and how she's pushing creative boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think it's especially fascinating because she's using a lot of elements that are kind of unexpected, darkness and silence and even a bit of a sinister vibe to create this really intense experience for the audience and get this.
Okay.
Phidias isn't even touring with her this time.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot to unpack here.
It is interesting how this tour, visually and sonically, is a departure for her.
Yeah.
The Guardian review describes her as sprinting across the stage
Oh, wow.
and vaulting between these different platforms and using screens to play with the visibility.
So really like taking up space in a way that maybe she hasn't in the past.
Right. And you pick up on that shift from her past anxieties about performing.
Yeah. I mean, remember all those interviews where she talked about just being overwhelmed
Yeah.
by the spotlight?
Yeah. And wanting to, retreat.
Yeah.
And it seems like with this tour, she's, actively choosing to command that attention
Yeah.
and enjoy it. And there's this Vogue quote where she says, I want to tour. I want to make it enjoyable. I don't want to, be miserable and lonely anymore.
Yeah.
And it just seems like she's really embodying that intention on stage.
That really makes me think about the title Hit Me Hard and Soft.
Right.
To me, it speaks to this balance that she's trying to strike
Yeah.
between vulnerability and strength.
Yeah.
And the review mentions, these macabre elements like alligator imagery and pyrotechnics during Bury a Friend.
Oh, wow.
But then there's this moment of complete silence during when the party's over.
Yeah.
So it's like she's really exploring these two sides of herself.
Yeah. And that's something that she's always done really well is play with those dynamics.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting is the way she commands the audience's silence.
Yeah.
It speaks to that trust
Yeah.
and connection that she's built with her fans. They're so in sync with her
It's true.
that they're willing to go silent with her to create space for that vulnerability.
It's almost like a shared breath.
Right.
This collective pause
Yeah.
before diving back into the music.
Exactly. And that's echoed, I think, in her vocal delivery, too.
Uh-huh.
The review points out the shift from her signature gauzy whisper to a more seductive deadpan.
Ah.
And even at times, a sinister baritone.
Wow, that sinister baritone. I'm really curious about that.
Yeah.
What do you think is going on there? Is it a specific technique or is it more just like the way she's using her voice to convey a different mood?
I think it's probably a combination of both. Maybe she's exploring some vocal techniques that create a deeper, richer tone. But what's interesting is how that connects with the visual elements on stage.
Right.
The darkness, the pyrotechnics.
Yeah.
It's all kind of working together to create this atmosphere of both allure and danger.
So it's not just the vocals in isolation.
No.
It's how they're integrated into this larger sensory experience.
Exactly.
The audience is being hit with this wave of both sound and visuals
Right.
that embodies that hard and soft dynamic.
Yeah, and then there's the sonic experimentation, too. The review mentions the use of autotune in L'amour de ma vie.
Uh-huh.
And it's not just a random effect. It's
Right.
being used to create a very specific texture. They describe it as this elasticated and crackling sound,
Wow.
which I think really mirrors the emotional turmoil of the lyrics.
So instead of using autotune to create this perfectly polished vocal,
Yeah.
it's more about using it to heighten the rawness?
Right. It's like she's deliberately subverting the traditional use of autotune,
Yeah.
which is often associated with a more manufactured sound, and she's turning it into this tool for emotional expression.
It's like how a guitar player might use distortion
Yeah.
to create this like raw, almost painful sound.
Yeah.
It's not about being pretty. It's about conveying a certain feeling.
Right.
I'm really curious about some specific examples of these like bolder musical choices.
Yeah.
The review mentions Lunch and Guess as these high energy moments.
Yeah.
What makes them stand out sonically?
Well, think about how those songs fit into those larger themes of vulnerability and power. Lunch, which the review describes as a sapphic provocation,
Okay.
likely uses playful lyrics and maybe even like a more seductive vocal style
Huh.
to create a mood of confident flirtation.
So sapphic in the sense of exploring themes of same-sex attraction or desire,
Yeah,
and provocative because it's pushing boundaries and challenging norms, like
right.
she's reclaiming her sexuality and owning her desires.
Exactly. And it's interesting how she uses that very specific musical term, sapphic,
Yeah.
to describe this aspect of her artistry. It's like she's deliberately reclaiming that term
Mm-hmm.
and giving it new meaning within her music. It's powerful, especially in a world where, LGBTQ plus identities are often marginalized or silenced.
And what about guess what's going on there musically that makes it stand out?
Well, Guess is interesting because the review calls it a massive rave.
Ooh, okay.
So you can imagine a driving beat, pulsating synths, maybe even some distorted vocals, really designed to get the audience moving,
Yeah.
create a sense of collective energy.
So it's like she's creating these sonic spaces for her audience to express themselves,
Yeah.
whether it's through silence or vulnerability or just letting loose on the dance floor.
Exactly. And I think all of this ties back to the idea of her evolution as a performer.
Yeah.
She's not just singing songs, she's creating an experience,
Yeah.
a world for her fans to step into.
And all of this is happening without Phineas by her side.
Right.
The review mentions that his absence isn't super noticeable, but I'm still curious about what it means for their creative partnership.
Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe this tour is a way for her to assert her independence as an artist,
Mm-hmm.
to explore her own creative vision without relying on their usual collaborative process.
It could be a sign of her maturing as an artist,
Yeah,
branching out, exploring new possibilities.
right. And it doesn't necessarily mean the end of their collaboration.
Right.
It could just be a natural evolution.
Yeah.
Many artists go through phases where they need to step outside of their comfort zones and experiment on their own.
That makes sense. It's like she's testing her wings, seeing what she can create on her own.
Yeah,
And it's interesting to think about how that might influence their future collaborations,
Yeah.
Maybe this experience will bring some fresh perspectives and new ideas to their creative partnership.
absolutely. Absence can often spark creativity. It forces you to look at things from a different angle, to experiment with new approaches.
So even though Phineas isn't physically present on this tour, his influence is still felt in a way.
Yeah.
Like his absence has created a space for her to step into her own power.
Right, and that's a powerful testament to the impact of their creative bond.
Yeah.
They've clearly influenced each other deeply, and that influence will continue to shape their individual artistic journeys.
I'm also thinking about the song choices on this tour. The review mentions the inclusion of What Was I Made For? And Birds of a Feather.
Yeah.
These songs are both massively popular but explore some pretty heavy themes.
Right.
What do you think their inclusion says about the message she's trying to convey with this tour?
Well, I think What Was I Made For? It really delves into those questions of purpose and identity,
Yeah,
which ties back to that overall theme of evolution that we've been talking about.
right.
It's like she's asking those big existential questions on stage and inviting her audience to grapple with them alongside her.
It's a reminder that even as she's achieving this incredible level of success, she's still a human being,
Yeah.
grappling with the same uncertainties and vulnerabilities as everyone else.
And that's what makes her so relatable
Yeah.
to her fans. She's not afraid to show her flaws, her doubts, her struggles.
And then you have Birds of a Feather, which explores the darker side of fame.
Yeah, that one's tough.
It touches on the isolation, the pressure, the feeling of being constantly watched and judged.
Right. It's like she's acknowledging the challenges that come with her level of fame, the sacrifices that she's had to make,
Yeah.
the toll that it can take on her mental health.
By including these songs in the setlist, she's creating a space for her fans to connect with her on a deeper level,
Yeah.
to recognize that even their idols experience pain and vulnerability.
And that's a really powerful message to send, especially to a young audience who often idealize celebrities.
Right.
It's a reminder that we're all human with our own complexities and struggles.
So going back to the beginning, we set out to explore how Eilish is using this tour to push boundaries musically and visually, while still engaging with the themes that have resonated with her audience from the start.
And it seems like she's doing just that.
Yeah.
This is a tour that embraces experimentation, vulnerability, and a deep connection with her fans.
It's like she's inviting us into her world, not just as a performer, but as a human being,
Yeah.
going through a process of growth and transformation. And it's exciting to see how that evolution is reflected in her music, her stage presence, and her willingness to tackle these difficult topics.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that art is a powerful tool for self-expression, for connecting with others,
Yeah.
for exploring the complexities of the human experience.
I'm curious to hear what our listener thinks.
Yeah.
Do you see this too as a turning point for Eilish?
Ooh.
Is she stepping into a new era of her career?
Hmm.
What do you make of her bold artistic choices?
It's a question worth pondering. We're witnessing an artist at a pivotal moment, pushing boundaries and challenging expectations.
And with Phineas stepping back from touring, it'll be interesting to see how their creative partnership evolves in the future.
Right. Will they continue to collaborate, or will they branch out and explore individual projects?
Yeah.
It's a dynamic that will continue to fascinate fans and critics alike.
But one thing is, for sure, this tour isn't just a collection of songs, it's a statement.
It's a declaration of artistic independence, a celebration of growth, and a reminder that even amidst the pressures of fame,
Yeah.
vulnerability and authenticity can shine through.
And for those lucky enough to be in Australia, you can still catch Billie Eilish performing in Brisbane until February 22nd,
Okay?
in Sydney from February 24th to 28th, and in Melbourne from March 4th to 8th.
Don't miss the chance to see this evolution in action.
Yeah, it really does feel like a turning point. And I think what's so interesting is how she's doing all of this while staying true to those core elements
Yeah.
that first drew people to her music,
Yeah.
that rawness, that emotional honesty.
That's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
To evolve without losing sight of your artistic essence.
Mm-hmm.
It's a delicate balance,
Yeah.
but one that she seems to be striking quite effectively. She's not afraid to experiment to push boundaries,
Uh-huh.
but she's also mindful of staying connected to that emotional core of her music.
And I think that's why her fans are responding so positively to this tour.
Yeah,
They sense that he's growing, but she's not abandoning them.
right.
Or the things that they loved about her earlier work.
Yeah, it's like she's inviting them along on this journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
And that kind of authenticity is incredibly powerful, especially in the often artificial world of pop music.
It makes me wonder how this tour, with all of its experimentation or vulnerability, might influence her future work.
Uh-huh.
Do you think we'll see her lean further into these darker, more experimental sounds, or will she find a way to blend them
Right.
with those more ethereal elements from her earlier music?
It's hard to say for sure, but what's exciting is that she's clearly not afraid to take risks.
Yeah.
She's willing to explore different sonic landscapes, different emotional territories,
Uh-huh.
and that suggests that her future work will likely be just as surprising and unpredictable as this tour has been.
Yeah. Maybe we'll even see her incorporate more elements of those high-energy rave vibes from Guess into her future album. Imagine a full-on Billie Eilish dance track.
Now, that would be something.
Right.
But even if she doesn't go full-on dance, I think it's safe to say that her music will continue to evolve in ways that we can't fully predict.
Right.
And that's part of what makes her such a captivating artist. That sense of constant evolution,
Uh-huh.
that willingness to surprise her audience.
Well, one thing is certain, we've only scratched the surface of what this tour and Billie Eilish's evolving artistry has to offer.
And as always, the most exciting part is what comes next.
Yeah.
What new sounds will she explore? What new boundaries will she push?
What new stories will she tell?
Yeah.
So, those are questions we'll have to wait to have answered. But in the meantime, if you're lucky enough to be in Australia, don't miss the chance to see this incredible show. It's a testament to the power of artistic evolution, the enduring appeal of authenticity, and the magic that happens when a truly gifted artist connects with their audience on a deeply personal level.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the question that's been lingering throughout our deep dive. How do you think Billie Eilish's career will continue to evolve? What kind of artist do you imagine her becoming?
Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear what you think.